Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. My name is slicedlime, and this is episode 8 of Advanced Map Making Tutorials. Last time we built our ready check. That's this here, state 1 and entering state 1. What I've done since then is just put on some signs to put some documentation on what these things are doing. That's basically it. And now if we go over here and look here what we have next, it is preparing arena. That is what today's episode is going to be about. We are going to prepare an arena for ourselves and make our map reusable. First things first, 1, 2, 3, 4, whoops, 4. That's what I have in between here, right? Yeah, it's 3, yeah. So, we need another state clock here for state 2. So you could grab a sign and put state 2 on here, and then we're just going to go the lazy route and just copy paste most of this stuff. This obviously is state 2, and let's see, we want it always active, so let's switch that on, place another one, always active, conditional, and here we put our first command for whatever we want our state 2 detection to do. Now also, 1, 2, 3, 4. Entering state 2. Okay, so again, we can copy and paste this stuff. So now we can test for the state being 2. And also the old state being 1. Now here's where you have to be a bit careful. This could easily go wrong if you can enter a state from more than one state. We know, however, that we are always going to be coming from the ready check into state 2, which is preparing arena. So we can use that for our test 4 right there. Always active, conditional. And here we're just going to do a tell raw in a continuation of what we did last time. Because we never actually told anybody that the ready check passed. That's what we want to do here. We just want to do a simple text message that says ready check passed, preparing arena. Or actually, let's do that so people know to wait. Okay. So now what? Now we are preparing an arena. What does that mean? So let's discuss this a bit before we get going. Okay, so what does preparing arena mean? Why is there a need to prepare an arena? Well, the need arises because we are making a mini game here, and if you've played Entrapment or if you've played Build of Parkour, my maps, or even if you've played Bubble Shooter, you'll know that they are replayable maps. Minigame maps should be replayable. Both Build of Parkour and Entrapment feature a randomized arena selection, so you play on an arena and it's a random one of several chosen. And then when you're done, it's reset so you can play on a different one next time. And regardless of how many times you play, you get a pristine version of it every time. And this is how you should do it unless your map has some sort of twist to it and that the design requires you to keep playing on a more and more broken map. However, that should be a very rare exception rather than the norm. In the normal case, you want to reset your map. Even if you only have one arena, you probably want to make sure that it's resettable. So how do we do that? Well, I'm not going to go into arena selection and the stuff that we have in Entrapment. You should be able to cobble most of that together from what we've seen in the previous episodes of selecting round length and stuff like that. What we are going to do is we're going to select a random arena when we start this state 2, and we're going to copy that into our arena space. Now, let's just go into what an arena actually is. So I talked last time about this mini game being some form of PvP game in an arena, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to prepare 2 arenas, and we're just going to randomize between them, and the only reason we are doing 2 is just to show you that there's more than one. The point of this is, an arena for a PvP game will generally be large enough that you can't clone it in one step. That is the case, for instance, with Entrapment, so we're going to look at how we can solve that problem. First of all, though, we want to place our arenas somewhere. Now, if you recall, this block here is block 1008 and 0. This is one of the edges of our spawn chunks, and basically what I did with Entrapment was way over there diagonally I placed the arenas. So they are at the opposite end of the spawn chunk, which means I can grow my command blocks this way, and I can grow my arenas the other way, and I can fit as many as possible without them colliding into each other. Now also remember that because of the way we laid out our spawn chunks way back at the beginning of the series, in the very first episode, we have 17 by 17 spawn chunks. That means that I can, let's do set block and 272 blocks away and at height 0. So 272 blocks away. That is the one block that is just outside our spawn chunks. So we're going to reduce it by 1. Oops. And let's set an emerald block there. So we have our block. Let's go over there just to show you, give you some idea of how big that is. Keep going, keep going. We see a block in the distance. There's our block. Sprint there for a while. And here we are. We can maybe show, no, can't see the stuff over there. So our spawn chunks are pretty big, and it should not be a problem to, oh interesting, if you have just at the corner of the screen we can see a slight bit of our command box over there. Anyway, let's make something here that is too large for a single clone. So let's make a base of our arena that's maybe 64 times 64 blocks. So, bedrock box, well, like so. What's my FOV at? 90. Okay. That's why things are distorting a bit. Switch that back to default, actually. So now we have the sort of size of our arena, and let's just build up some walls around this from here. So let's go up a bit so we don't get suffocated by this, and just say fill from where I am, from 0 to where I am, and let's make it 24 high maybe, and do it 63 blocks. And I forgot the block type again. Bedrock. No, not bedrock. Oh, there we go. Okay, so now we have that, and we can do the same thing in the other direction. Like so. And if we go to this corner, whoops, we can do the same there. And then once more from over here. Where's that thing? Wow. I fail. So many beds today. Kill at E type equals item. There we go. And here. Oh well. Now we have an arena. You can see this is quite a large amount of space, and assuming that we fill this up with a bunch of blocks, well, there's no way that you're going to be able to clone this entire space at once. So if we just place down some of those, then this is a lot of blocks. You will not be able to clone this at once. Minecraft will complain if you try. Now what we can do is we can do another one here. So if we go 64 blocks over from here and set more bedrock, and let's do bedrock this time and not beds, then we get further walls here, and then we can keep doing this. Actually, let's go from here, and we get ourselves a big box of bedrock that we can build inside. So like so. And like so. And then finally we need ourselves a floor. And we can create that from this corner with the command we used before, which is somewhere in our history among all the beds. Here it is. There we go. Now we have two different arenas. Let's put down something else so that we can easily distinguish these arenas. Pink wool. Woo! Okay. Now we have the pink arena and the wood arena. How do we select between these? Well, we do that by having an entity so that we can randomize. And the way I usually do that is you just put something on the corner here. So summon an entity, like an armor stand right here. And you can place it on top of the thing. You can place it inside the top of the thing. That's usually what I tend to do. And we're just going to do a custom name. And it's going to be arena. And we'll just do custom name visible 1. And no, gravity 1. Like so. Arena armor stand right there. Now we can go over here and do the same. There we go. We now have two armor stands here named arena. This means that we can select a random one of them using the @r selector, which means we can select a random one of these arenas. Now what we want is somewhere to play the game. Where does that take place? Well, we're not going to play the game in these arenas. These arenas are in the spawn chunks, and we want to keep our players away from the spawn chunks because this is where all this stuff happens. This is just a template, this is just a logic thing, and we don't actually want players to be over here at all. What we do want players to be is at spawn. So over here we have our spawn lobby, and the lobby is centered around 0, 0. We're looking at block 0, 0, 0. And we have a positive X in that direction, positive Z in this direction. We kind of just want to pick a convenient coordinate for our arena. But keep in mind that when our players are standing there, we need to have the arena within range so that we can do operations on it, even though it's not in our spawn chunks. So maybe just pick the coordinates 64 and 0 as our starting point because our arena is size 64. And then we're going to do another bedrock box, and I hope I can manage to not mess this one up. And now we have our actual playing field right here near our lobby. This is where we want the actual arena to be copied into. How do we do that? Well, we have already established that this place is far too large to clone the entire thing, which means that we're going to have to clone it in some pieces. In my mind, that's easiest to do in slices, so just take one row of the arena per turn. Do remember this though, our arena's corner is right here at 64, 0. Let's head on over back to our command blocks and do some more logic over here. What we want to do over here, now we entered state 2. This told our players that we are now preparing our arena, so let's start doing that by selecting one of the arenas. And that's simply going to be a scoreboard players tag at E type equals armor stand name equals arena remove selected. So we're going to use a selected tag to keep track of which arena has been selected for play. Now we're just going to basically do the same thing. So let's copy that and paste it in here. But instead of doing it for all armor stands, we're going to do it for one random armor stand. And because we have the type argument in here, it's going to select among armor stands and not players. And instead of removing it, we're going to add it. So after this block, we'll have selected one of the two arenas over there. Now copying the arena, since it's done in slices, means that we'll have to do it on a clock, rather than just a lot of blocks here. That means we need some form of state keeping, and we need some form of idea of how to do that. Minecraft does not let you copy blocks relative to two entities. So if we fly over to our boxes over here, our armor stand is right over here. Now it would be convenient to copy from this armor stand over there and then copy that relative to another armor stand and move it up one step and then copy that over there and then keep moving it along here. Sadly, you can't do that because you have to have a fixed coordinates on either the source or the target. In our case, that's going to be the target. You can get around that by using a sort of intermediate storage, but that means a massive amount of copying blocks, which we don't want because this is going to lag your players quite a bit regardless, and you don't want to make that worse than it has to be. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to use a whole ton of command blocks. Let's place an impulse command block here. And let's put a sign on that. This is going to be cloning process. And let me explain to you exactly what that means. In this command block, there's going to be one clone command that clones one row across an entire arena over there. The problem is, since we have to have unique coordinates, there's not going to be one of these. And that's why this is an impulse command block. There's going to be one of these per line. But essentially, these are going to look like this. Execute off of E, name equals arena, tag equals selected. So we're going to execute from our selected arena and then execute a command off of that. That command is going to start at an offset of 1, be at a height of 1, and then at an offset of 1 in Z. Because remember, this armor stand is inside of the bedrock box, which we don't necessarily need to copy. We just need to copy its contents. And then we're going to do a clone command. Now, what are we cloning? Well, we already put the starting coordinates in, so let's just copy those. We want to then clone 62 blocks over, 23 blocks up, and to the same coordinate. So we're copying one line of blocks aligned along the Z-axis at once. And then where do they go? Well, they go over to our fixed coordinates that we know about, and we start at 65, 1, and 1 over there, because we, again, went 1 in X and Z coordinates from 64 and 0. So that's our first clone command, and then we're going to copy that, and then we're going to go in here, and we're going to go an offset of 2, and then 2. And then this is how we're going to go about it. And you're going to get 63 of those blocks. There are MC edit filters and stuff like that let you put in a command with a variable in it and it just increases by 1 every command block. I suggest you use them. We're using 64 of them here, so it would be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, you get it. It would go on like that. But they're all going to follow the very same pattern until all the way over at the end where we're going to put a stop block that will do something different. Now how do we use these? Well, what we're going to be doing is we're going to create an entity that will move along these and run one of them per tick. We do that here. And then we're going to need to use this coordinate. So over here we have 103300. That's where we want to summon something. And we summon an armor stand, because why not? 103300. You can use an area effect cloud there if you want instead. I prefer the armor stands because you can see them, they can be labeled with names and so on. Custom name cloner, maybe. Custom name visible 1 marker 1 no gravity 1. Okay, so we summon an armor stand, it ends up over here, and then we're gonna do something with that, and that goes on this clock. So every tick of this clock we want to execute something off of any entity that is an armor stand and that is named cloner. This is what we named it, right? Cloner. So we execute something off of its position, and what we do is block data for where it is, and we do auto 1, and I think that's a byte. So we set the block where it is to 1. Now we're looking at the negative Z direction, and what we need to do is reset this so we can be used again. And we're basically going to run exactly the same command again, but we're going to offset 1 in the negative Z direction, and we're going to set it back to 0. What does auto mean? Auto is simply this button. Always activate redstone, which means that as this armor stand ticks along here, it's going to set this block to activate without redstone, and then it's going to set the block behind it to deactivate. And then it's going to set this block to activate without redstone and deactivate this block. and it will go along like this. And of course the next thing to do is to make it go along like that, which just means teleport at E, type equals armor stand, name equals cloner, and simply one block further along the z-axis. Okay, so let me get these 64 impulse command blocks sorted out, and then we'll continue. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're here 63 command blocks later. This one ends up at 62 to 62. Now, why don't we copy in bigger chunks? You could do that. There's nothing preventing you from doing that. But what happens is you create the mother of all lag spikes for your players. And it will take them different amounts of time to catch up. So the way I did it first in Entrapment was to just have 4 big copies. That actually has some advantages, mostly in that things that are attached to walls don't like being copied in slices, like ladders and vines. But the advantage of this is you don't lag out your players terribly. This is a much smoother experience. So we start our ticker here. It's going to run all the way along here. Cloner moves over here, and it clones a lot of blocks. So how do we know when we're done? Easy. We just put one last command block over here, and that one is going to be scoreboard players set at E, type equals armor stand, name equals game, state 3. So we just directly move into state 3. Now, oh wow, hello slime, that's interesting. Okay, now anyway, we are going to want to do a few more things here. So now I'm just going to tack onto this one. I'm just going to do a bunch of chain command blocks because these things can all happen in the same tick. Because next tick, we're not going to be in state 2 anymore, so we're not going to keep moving the cloner anymore. So we're going to get rid of that. Equals cloner. And then there's one more thing we have to do, and that's to set this command block back into a runnable state. And that is going to be a block data command on an offset of 2, and it's going to set auto to 0b. That is all we need to copy an arena, ladies and gentlemen. Now this is going to be exceptionally quick because our arena is essentially empty, but if you have more blocks than I do right here, then it's going to lag significantly. Let's teleport ourselves over to our lobby here. And let's go over to our box and let's take a look at this stuff in action. Now, scoreboard objectives, set display sidebar state. Our state is currently 0. But remember that we can switch our state at will. So we're just going to go scoreboard players set at E, name equals game, state 1. And that immediately went as to past because there's nobody in the ready check, and you can see that it copied our arena for us here. Now, of course, that's normally going to happen if you run a full ready check, but it's good to keep in mind that you can just modify the state of your game on the fly to test this stuff out. And one of the advantages of our state clocks over there is that, well, it actually reacts to your changes of the state immediately. So now we have copied our arena, we're almost ready to start the game. And that's what we're going to get into next time. There's one little small state that's going to be in between. It's a very simple state. All it does is a countdown so people are ready. And we're going to get into some unexpected details of that next time. But mostly that's just going to be a countdown, and then we're going to get into spawning and rounds and all kinds of scorekeeping and whatever else there is to making a minigame. Before we end, last time I asked about what I should do with Minecraft 1.8. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to discontinue the detailed explanations and the parallel map. As always, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this was understandable, and if it wasn't, please feel free to leave any questions you have down in the comment section down below, and we'll get to them in coming episodes. Also, we're getting close to implementing actual game logic, so any suggestions for what I should bring up in terms of game logic is much appreciated. I know there's been requests for the random loot chests for entrapments. We can definitely do that, and we're going to go through scorekeeping and detecting the end of the game and such. But that is all upcoming in future episodes. That is enough for one episode. Thank you very much for watching. My name is slicedlime, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.